Hi there, welcome once again to the Dukascopy TV studio here in Geneva. I'm Ben Jones. Alongside me is Arnaud Dotezac, editor at Market Magazine. Arnaud, once again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, today we're obviously discussing sanctions, but not in the normal sense, not in the sense that most people approach it from with the economic and geopolitical aspect. We're actually looking at more of a normative aspect, which isn't often analysed. So, when one country imposes sanctions on another because of a violation, who decides that this is a violation?
Well, you know, the basic principle in international public law is that all the countries are equal in sovereignty. So what does it mean? It means that there is nobody above. So it means that the very specificity of international law is the self-interpretation of it by the countries. Okay? So when a country says this is a violation of the law, it is not the report of a decision of justice. It is not the report of any arbitration court sentence, but it is, actually speaking, a political allegation. So when a country decides to impose sanctions against another country, first, it is a break in the rule of equality of sovereignty, number one. And second, it is just a political allegation, governmental decision. That's it.
Okay. Now, on what grounds are Switzerland imposing these sanctions? What's the justification?
Well, basically two justifications. Since the 2nd of April, when the first sanction against Russia have been taken by Switzerland, the first one is an idea of, okay, Switzerland should not be the, let's say, the sanction heaven of the whole world. Nobody should bypass the European sanction, just to limit the question to the European ones, to the neighbors. Nobody should bypass the European sanction here in Switzerland. It should not be a place where you can bypass, okay? So this has a very great meaning that I will elaborate. And the second justification is a legal one, mainly the fact that Switzerland considers that the unification of Crimea to Russia is a violation of international law. Okay? So regarding this bypassing question, it looks good. You know, it's okay. We don't want our country to be, you know, used. But what does it mean? Really, it is a very deep question. Why? Because what does it mean when a norm is bypassed? It means that the very authority, which means the country which, let's say, produces the law, does not want this law to be, you know, circumvented. Okay, does not want somebody to find a way to, actually speaking, to bypass the law. But this is a question of internal law within a country. For instance, in tax evasion, let's say France. You know, France wants to have the maximum of tax power, you know, over its people and companies. And so they have a lot of dissuasive anti-bypass regulations. Okay, who decides? France, not I don't know, you know, Mauritius or another country, or China will decide for the tax law of France. But here it is exactly the case. All of a sudden, Switzerland decides to be kind of submissive to some laws and norms, regulation, because sanctions are regulations, submissive to foreign laws. Okay, so all of a sudden there is something which looks good, but which actually means something else, which means subordination of Switzerland to Europe. And what does it mean, subordination of Switzerland to Europe? It means that there is a reduction of the sovereignty of Switzerland in favor of Europe. But this is against the law, because the government, the Conseil Fédéral, is a guarantor of the independence of the country. So behind something which looks good in terms of, you know, information, there is a big issue behind, and this really deserves to be more, let's say, analyzed, and to, let's say, to open a public debate on this very argument. It's a key point.
Okay, now the other aspect that you mentioned is obviously with regards to Crimea. So in terms of international law, who decides if that was a violation?
Well, again, as I told you at first, okay, people, they will decide, I mean, countries, it's a political allegation, it's a political standing, you know. But it's based, of course, on analysis, on, let's say, consensus about from a doctrinal point of view. And this works quite well regarding Crimea, but only under one condition, is that the analysis of the Swiss government and other countries starts 1st December 1991. Why? Because this was the date of independence of Ukraine. So starting from this point, what was the situation at that time? At that time, Crimea was a province of Ukraine, and so I will not enter into too much details, but there are many principles saying that, okay, the administrative borders of a previous state within a federation which splits from it will become the external borders. If Crimea was in, that's it, finished. And on top of that, there was, let's say, treaties, international treaties between Russia and Ukraine acknowledging this situation. So, you know, that's a fact. Crimea was part of Ukraine. But only if you start from 1st December 1991. Now, because international law is a matter of self-interpretation by the countries, it is absolutely not forbidden to, let's say, start the analysis from another point of view, not only geographical, but a temporal point of view. And if you go a little bit back in the history, what do you find? Very strange thing that nobody cares too much about is that Ukraine was considered by the international community as an independent country since 1945. Why? Because Ukraine was a founding member of the United Nations. We know why, we know that there was a Yalta discussion. This is not the point. From a legal point of view, Ukraine was considered as an independent country, even not 100% independent. We don't care because it was within a federation. Like many European countries are within Europe. And for instance, the sanctions, they are decided in Brussels. Okay, so we don't care if it is 100%. It is enough that it is. So not only Ukraine was a member of United Nations, but has been 2 times before 91 member of the Security Council, which is not nothing. I mean, the Canton de Fribourg cannot be member of the Security Council. Hawaii cannot be member of the. So only a country can be, and 2 times, 4 years altogether, with plenty of decisions which have been taken there by Ukraine, and sometimes against the vote or differently than USSR at the time. So what does it mean? That in 1945, when Ukraine entered into the United Nations, Crimea was not part of it. So it means that when Crimea has been adjunct by Khrushchev in 1954 to Ukraine, it was not an internal issue. It was already the adjunction, what we call a succession of states, because Ukraine was independent from a diplomatic point of view, international point of view. So it was an adjunction of a territory to a foreign country. Okay? It means that normally at that time, the very people of Crimea should have had the choice of, okay, at least nationality. The borders also should have been traced, especially sea borders, you know. So many issues there were at stake, but nothing happened. Why? Because there was no change of nationality. Does it mean that the right of self-determination of Crimean people was dead? No. We can say, from a theoretical point of view, which is a big issue, actually speaking, that this very right of self-determination was born in 1954 and suspended until the moment where it could have been expressed. And this moment arrived in 1991, to make it short. To make it short, in 1990, Crimea decided to raise its administrative level within the USSR Federation from a region to an autonomous republic. And this has been done. And there was a referendum to do it, which was a self-determination referendum, the 12th of January 1991, before the independence of Ukraine, so-called. So what does it mean? It means that this very right, born in 1954, has been expressed, suspended until, and expressed 12th of January 1991. And the result was, without doubt, it was 94% of the population. It was a regular vote. Nobody blamed it. And it was done with the approval of the central government of Kiev. Okay? So what does it mean? At that very moment, okay, first, Crimea was no more a region. So after the collapse of USSR, Crimea normally should have the right to be independent at the same level as Ukraine. And number two, the population say we don't want to stay with Ukraine, we want to go to USSR. Okay? What happened? So that was a fact. It was a fact, and it was a legal fact. What happened? Government of Kiev, which was already supported by an advisory council with American teams and a lot of people who are still, active with the Orange Revolution and so on, the same people there. Immediately, in high urgency, they took a law 12th of February following this referendum, saying we recognize this new status, but within Ukraine. From a technical point of view, what it means. The self-determination right, which was totally legal, has been denied. And that means what? That it was a kind of counterbalance, movement. And it means, technically, okay, it's open to debate. Maybe people can have another, let's say, point of view. But it's a point. It means that Ukraine annexed Crimea at that very moment. So it means what? It means that, the rights of the people there have been denied. Okay? So they are still there. And the referendum of March 2014 means a lot of things then. It is not a process of annexation by Russia, but first it can be a process of de-annexation from Ukraine. But more than that, it is the re-establishment of the people in the right acquired at that moment, and it has been done pacifically. So it's a big issue. So the very fact of saying it is a big violation is subject to discussion, and the duty of Switzerland there is what? To put more fire on the wood in a conflict? Certainly not. This is not the duty of Switzerland. The duty of Switzerland is to open a space of discussion. And so when you have such a big issue at stake, from a political point of view, cultural point of view, maybe it would have been more interesting for Switzerland to keep its neutrality there and to open the debate on these questions. That is our point of view.
So those 2 points are quite fragile, but what's the legal grounds for Switzerland with regards to sanctions then?
It's quite a very complex and technical issue, so it's difficult to go very much into the detail. But globally speaking, it is based on a law which is called the law on embargoes. But it's a very strange law, because before this law, to take a sanction, the government would rely directly on the constitution in order to save the main strategic interest of Switzerland. So it has to prove that there was something at stake in this regard. But with this law, if you just read it, Article 1, Article 2, very, very easy to understand. It is said this law has been done in order to apply foreign sanctions. So again, you have this idea of submission there, and you have this idea of subordination of Switzerland to another country. This is in the law, and it has been voted. It passed in the parliament just after the 9/11. So there was a big turmoil. The people were not maybe totally, let's say, aware of the consequences, and it has been presented at that time as just a technical issue. But if you read it well, it is not. It is really a law which creates almost an obligation of submission to Europe, which means what? It means that it is a law which integrates part of Switzerland already in the European legal system. And so also this is a question to be debated, I think.
Definitely. Very interesting. Once again, Arnaud, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks to you.
And thank you for watching. Do make sure you keep clicking back to Dukascopy TV, as we'll be bringing you plenty more updates and exclusive interviews. Bye for now.